Hello and welcome to the Ending Body Burnout Show. We are your hosts, Chris and Philly, co-founders of a multi-award-winning functional medicine practice, serving busy people with energy, mood, and gut issues.
While busyness, addictive doing, people-pleasing, and perfectionism might be the norm, it's not normal, and it's a major contributor to health issues.
Our goal with this show is to give you a holistic root cause approach to healing your body so that you don't have to continue doctor or diet hopping or popping a gazillion supplements hoping something might stick.
So get ready to heal your body, get your spark back, deeply connect with yourself, and step into the life of your dreams.
Let's dive in. G'day guys and welcome to this episode of the Ending Body Burnout Show. We're super excited to share this Connect the Dots episode with you all. In these Connect the Dots episodes, we take a listener's case and we put our detective hats on to connect the dots of their health symptoms, and we try and identify potential body, mind, environment, root causes and to suggest some best lab tests to confirm these imbalances. In today's episode, we're going to dig into a complex case around eczema and the hormone links. So we thank you, dear listener Alexandra, for sending in your case and letting us investigate this on our podcast today.
Yeah, I'm excited. If you would like your own case reviewed on a Connect the Dots episode, just go to the show notes and you can click the application form link and you can send us your case. We do love doing these ones. Or if you really love the way that we work with body systems, looking at symptoms, looking at deeper metaphysical root causes, you can also start your journey in real life and book in for a Connect the Dots initial consult. So I'll pop that in the show notes as well. Now, before we dive in, just want to make this clear that these Connect the Dots episodes are only for information, educational purposes only. So including to the listener who sent in the case, this doesn't replace having an official consult with us or having a consult with your medical doctor or practitioner. What we discussed today isn't coming from a place of advice giving, do this based on X, Y, and Z symptom. It's more giving you another perspective on conditions and combinations of symptoms and looking at it from a really holistic root cause approach, which is what we do inside our Ending Body Burnout method and what this podcast is all about. Okay, so let's dive into today's case. The biggest body burnout symptom that this listener is struggling with is having eczema, which is linked to pain and swelling in the legs. And she notices that it gets worse with her hormonal cycle. So it gets worse just before the period and starts improving after the period. Now, I always like to get an indication of when symptoms first started because this is great clues to say, okay, this is, where it started. This is what might be happening inside the body, inside your unconscious mind that is still holding on to this symptom or condition. So for this listener, she has said that she has had eczema since she was very little. There's no specific time or no specific year or age there. That might, I'm curious around that. I'm like, if it's a newborn baby and they develop eczema within days of being out of the womb, then it's like, okay, usually that's like, there's some microbiome stuff going on. Or if it's kind of like later on in life, maybe 3 years old, and what else was happening around there. And, if there was like chronic stress in one's life, then it just gives me more information in terms of where the issue might have started and what the root causes might be. Anyway, so she developed eczema when she was little, but didn't have it through her teenage years. The eczema disappeared, which is interesting because that's when a teenage girl's body is starting to produce more hormones and all sorts of things. So it disappeared during teenage years. Then it came back in 2015 when she started traveling. She said it got really bad when she showered in chlorinated water. She's from Germany. And the Germany's water isn't chlorinated, so she thinks maybe that's where it might have started or it might have set it off. which again is also interesting. It's kind of like, oh, okay, there might be some detoxy type things going on, that a body's ability to detox from chlorinated water might be compromised. She also said she had no eczema at all when she was pregnant and was able to eat whatever she wanted. But after she finished breastfeeding, the eczema came back and it has been the worst it's ever been. Now it's on and off depending on where the cycle is at. And there's also a food allergy link there too. So all of this stuff is starting to paint a picture. It's like, okay, so it's a condition that was there as a little girl, but it disappeared in teenage years, came back when traveling, disappeared again with pregnancy and breastfeeding. Now it's come back, and it's come back with a vengeance. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Okay. I'm also curious around when it started. So there's definitely a hormonal link here, which we'll dig into shortly when we look at the physical body system side of things. But my brain kind of like is censored towards it started when I was traveling again after being a teenager. So there's so many questions. Like if I had a client in a Connect the Dots consult that I would ask around that, I'd be super curious around, well, what was happening during this time? Was the traveling stressful? I know, I think Chris and I have had many conversations with going overseas. It's fun and it's an adventure and it's connection, but it's also very stressful in many ways.
It comes down to stories, doesn't it? Because it doesn't make it inherently stressful. You love experiences, don't you? You love getting out there. I love where we live. I love our little town on the Tasmanian northwest coast. It's beautiful. To me, every day is a holiday for me. So when we travel, I don't have the bed. I don't have this beautiful Super King koala mattress bed, which, by the way, not sponsored by, but totally.
It's a good mattress.
Oh, love it. But when I go away as a 6'7", over 200 centimeter tall dude that's not tiny, mattresses aren't amazing in Airbnbs when we travel, not as amazing as our really expensive nice one. So for me, I have stories that pop up around traveling, so which you they're not even close to popping up for you.
Well, yeah, but I'll have similar ones. Like the reason why I highlighted the traveling side of things is that although it's exciting, it's often very stressful and different in a different way for different people. So you hate the discomfort of it because your body is in pain and you don't get as good as sleep because you can't, like your body's in pain because you can't fit in the planes properly. And I hire the cars that are like for little people, and then I make
Philly
you
gets
drive
like
down.
tiny hatchbacks, little MGs, and I'm just like that episode of The Simpsons where that really tall guy is driving the car and his knees are up around his ears. That's Chris.
I also feel like your old army days kind of like get switched on when we're in a different environment too, like danger, protection.
Yeah,
got to protect my girls. Whereas I'm just like
lots of
carefree and like, I'll walk. I remember in Fiji, not that Fiji is scary at all, but there was a place that it was like quite late at night and I'm like, nah, it's all good. I'll go into that like petrol station. And then all of a sudden there were like 6 men that all followed me into this tiny store, and I was like, maybe I'm a little bit scared right now.
Yeah.
But my radar isn't there. I'm just like, this is fun and this is an adventure.
It's super common for, not just for ex-army guys or current army guys, but for guys in general, like
dads
for dads, a lot of dads tapping into protective mode. Well, what is protective mode? This is dangerous. This is unsafe, which is a story. It's some people can go into a situation and not fear for their loved ones. And so the point that we're trying to get here is there's going to be some stories around traveling. There's going to be some stories around stress and safetyness. And
the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Yeah.
So again, if there was this listener who sent her case in, we were having a real life conversation, coaching session, consulting. we'd be asking these types of questions to gather more information around like this person's nervous system, their patterns, their potential stories, deeper beliefs. Like just touching on the travel. Yeah, like in the past, travel was stressful for me because I had massive money scarcity issues. So I was constantly thinking about the budget and like, oh no, we can't spend money on that. Oh no, you can't get a drink there. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Whereas nowadays it's a lot more free and fun. But my stress with travel might come from, well, I don't eat the way that I usually do, or I get dehydrated, or I do love adventure and I love experiencing so many things. And so sometimes I might put too much into the day.
Yeah.
Another thing too with travel that I always ask if someone's been overseas and it's like, oh yeah, my symptoms started during or after travel is, were you sick? Did you get some sort of a tummy bug like barley belly, or did you get a really bad flu? Because either of those could be pinpointing to like parasites or even Lyme disease. Okay, that's the travel. I mean, that was like a tiny little part of the sentence, but I'm like, well, let's go there. The things that this woman has tried so far, so when she was little, her mum tried lots of natural therapies. She couldn't remember what they were, but the doctor tried a lot of things. She could only remember taking some drops and she could only remember getting her blood taken, and she was on a very strict diet. So over the years, she's worked out that she can't have dairy or wheat. They make it worse. But even when she avoids it, the eczema still comes and goes with cycle. So it's not just the food. It's not just the cycle. There's other stuff going on. Currently, she is just using topical natural things like shea butter to keep it moisturized. Okay, so there's so much. This is like, I get really excited too when I get to what have you tried so far. If someone hasn't tried a lot of things, like I actually wouldn't say that this woman has tried a lot of things. Maybe her mum did when she was little, but she can't remember. But there's like, okay, wow, there's so many missing pieces that we could go into that could make a huge difference for this woman's health. I also get really excited when people have tried a lot of things and still they're stuck. It's like, cool. It's highly likely deep metaphysical root causes. And that makes me excited because magic happens when you start addressing that. A little bit about her life now. So she does shift work in the mornings from 4 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. and then she comes home and homeschools her two older girls. So it sounds like she's juggling a lot. She's doing a lot. She's also a stepmother to two older girls, and she's constantly worrying if she's a good enough mum because their mum died of cancer and now she's taking care of these kids, and her 2-year-old daughter is getting a lot more attention and constantly having feelings of like, am I doing enough for these other two girls? Am I enough? Am I enough? Am I enough? And so then therefore that makes sense why someone would be doing a lot of things to try and feel like or prove that they are enough. Okay. So in our practice, in our ending body burnout method, we always think about two main causes of body burnout. Both come from physical inflammatories as well as metaphysical inflammatories. It's never one or the other. It's always one and the other. And so we'll dig into both of these now. So from a physical point of view, I actually really enjoyed getting this case because I'm like, oh, that's so interesting around the eczema and the hormone link. So first of all, from a physical point of view in the body systems, if a person developed eczema as a little kid, my brain definitely always goes to gut health first because that is often where eczema starts as a young person. Mind you, there's a whole heap of other stuff below the surface that can contribute to that. But from a physical point of view, there's usually something around the microbiome, dysbiosis. The baby might have accumulated the mother's microbiome in the womb or during birth or breastfeeding. So from that point of view, I would ask more questions around what was mother's health like. Were you vaginal birth or were you breastfed? This can give us so much clues around potential microbiome dysbiosis, which is a common reason why people develop eczema, especially if it's triggered by different food sensitivities as a baby or a young child. The reason why the gut is so important and often linked to eczema is because if there's inflammatory things happening in your gut, like pathogens overgrowing, leaky gut, digestive organs not breaking down foods, and then foods are kind of putrefying, all of this is inflammation, then your immune system can become hypervigilant and you can start stimulating inflammatory reactions in the gut, which can manifest on the skin as eczema or other skin conditions. So I would definitely say doing a comprehensive stool test to really look at these body systems would be really important. Your beneficial microbiome is also so important. There's so many studies around Lactobacillus species being really important to prevent the risk of eczema in children. So a lot of women, well, if a woman was in my practice and she was pregnant, I would recommend her supplementing with this supplement so that it prevents the child from having eczema, because that is Lactobacillus species is amazing for skin health and to support the immune system. Okay, so the other thing too, like with eczema that starts as a little kid, would be detoxification. So there are some really common genetic mutations. We actually did an episode on genes in episode 74, and we dug into methylation in part of it. But 1 out of 4 people on the planet have methylation issues in terms of coming from a genetic mutation. So a baby can have that mutation and it can express early on in life, which then means it's harder to detox toxins from the body. So this means that the toxins build up in the system, and it's another inflammatory response that can trigger the immune system and make the body more sensitive and hypervigilant. So when that immune system is triggered because of the toxins you're holding onto in fat cells, then again, it can show up on the skin. And I mentioned the detox stuff as well because this woman mentioned that chlorinated water is a potential trigger. So if your body's not clearing toxins, every time you're exposed to that substance, your immune system is hypervigilant. It's like, oh my gosh, here it comes. We can't get rid of it. So we have to like send an inflammatory immune response to send this person a signal that it's not safe. Can show up on the skin. Now, whether any of this is actually happening in the body systems, we have a motto, test, not guess. I actually had an initial consult with someone who joined our Ending Body Burnout. So she had her connect the dots. And she's like, oh, I don't know, like, I feel like I tick all the boxes for adrenal fatigue. Like, do we really have to test for it? And she said that a few times around different things. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to say the same thing to you again and again. Test, not guess. Test, not guess. Let's just find out. Let's just find out, because you could do an adrenal protocol for 6 months and it might not be the thing that you need.
So then what do you believe about yourself right there? Like what are you afraid of?
It's a question that is a pattern.
Yeah. And then and it's just like, why are you not wanting to do the test? And it might be, I'm just putting words in her mouth. I don't know the story, but I don't want to spend the money. Interesting. Like the way you do anything is the way you do everything, you know, like.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay, the last body system I want to chat about, actually it's the second last, before we move into metaphysical root causes, is sex hormones, because there's obviously a clear link between the sex hormones and eczema. So this woman said that her eczema flares up before the period and then after the period it disappears, and also there was no eczema during pregnancy or breastfeeding. She could eat whatever she wanted and the eczema didn't flare up. So it's like, okay, what's happening here? So when a woman is cycling, they're producing estrogen and progesterone, and both of these hormones amp up the activity of certain cells in your immune system that affect your skin barrier. So this interaction with the hormones can trigger eczema symptoms. And I did a bit of research on this. I found that 47% of women who have eczema report their symptoms getting worse during the week before their periods. And this is according to a London nutrition clinic. And the sudden drop in estrogen that you have before your time of the month and the surge of progesterone can cause your eczema to flare as it can trigger immune cells. Alternatively, if you have too much estrogen, so if you're estrogen dominant, you can release more histamine in your body, and your histamine is part of your immune system, and there's also a connection between histamine and eczema. So there's a lot of research to show that your hormones that are fluctuating can trigger an immune response, which can show up on the skin. Also, I looked into pregnancy and breastfeeding because I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. I've had a few other clients with not always skin issues, but definitely food allergies where they're like, oh, I could eat anything. I could eat anything during pregnancy and breastfeeding. The moment that I stopped, all the symptoms came back. And so when you're pregnant and breastfeeding, you're producing heaps of progesterone and estrogen. And interestingly, eczema can get worse or better with pregnancy. The research shows that approximately 25% of women improve in their eczema, and 50% actually deteriorate, so the eczema gets worse. So there's no kind of like clear cut, this hormone goes up and the eczema goes up. It's actually just the body's individual body physiology will respond differently depending on your own physical makeup. Okay, so all of this is super interesting. The bottom line around the hormones is that you might have balanced hormones, and it might be nothing to do with your hormones as to why you have eczema. Because of just the way that the hormones, as they're fluctuating, trigger an immune response, there might actually be nothing to do with the hormones that need support. It might literally just be like, oh, that's an interesting link. Or you might have hormones that are out of whack, out of balance, that are contributing and making the eczema worse. So again, our motto, test, not guess. If a woman is cycling, like a test that I love would be the 28-day female hormone cycle. So that looks at progesterone and estrogen over the course of 28 days. And it will give you a very quick indication as to whether your hormones are normal and you don't have to touch that area to improve the eczema, or if they're out of whack, and that will actually support healing of the skin. And super quickly as well, adrenals. So we were talking about all the traveling stuff and potential stresses, and like even things like pregnancy. Was that stressful? This woman's life sounds pretty full on now. So stress hormones such as cortisol suppresses immune function. So that would be worth looking into as well. Is the eczema, does this have a stress component? And also if there's adrenal fatigue, your cortisol and DHEA levels, your stress hormones, convert directly into your sex hormones. So they often impact what your female hormones are doing as well. Okay. Anything to add, or shall we get into the metaphysical?
Well, flowing into metaphysical, a couple of the frames that I really like that I just kind of wanted to lay out here straight away is, right, let's focus on you. You can, there's a whole lot of outcomes that are out of your capacity to have a direct control over. So if you focus on you, your stories, we talked about travel and stories. This is something that you have a direct control over. So focus on you, focus on what you can do. And also when we use ointments or creams or medications or therapies and treatments and all that sort of stuff, even if it's natural, it can be a mask. It can be a way of covering up the root cause. Not saying it is, but it can be, and it usually is. So focus on you. Just know that sometimes treatment and ointments is a mask for what's actually really going on, and
not sometimes, it is if it's a chronic issue.
Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes it can be helpful if it's like an acute, I don't know, cracked heels or something.
Yeah, cool. And so I love metaphors. Just think about, what is skin?
It's a magic mirror.
Yeah, magic mirror. I also think
of your insides.
I actually think it holds you together. It's what's facing the world, and you've got a problem with what's facing the world, and stuff is happening from the inside out, it's coming out, and it's a little bit cracked, it's a little bit broken, what you're projecting is a little bit broken, but how you're holding together, and also your stories. And so I just think, right, cool, all right, well, what stories, what stress, what are you holding in? Let's let that out. Let's not mask it at first. Ever. Let's not mask it with medications and ointments and creams and all this sort of stuff. Let's just see what's going on inside.
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, like a resource that we use sometimes with
Protection.
clients, just to open up this metaphysical like inquiry.
Yeah.
Louise Hay, I think eczema's around mental eruptions.
Protection.
Oh, you got it.
Anxiety, fears, buried guck. She says, I am threatened, hurt, refusal to accept feelings, deadening of the senses, holding things together, cracking at the seams.
Yeah, so I think
You're
about
flaky,
yeah. I like, by the way, we don't know this listener
not at all.
So like we're filling out the holes with our own assumptions.
If it's on the money, then it's like sweet.
But I kind of connect to everything that Chris just said to what I read out earlier around like the stepkids and not feeling like I'm a good enough mother. Their mum died of cancer. So that's a big responsibility to step into another mother's shoes. And then, what was happening around the travel stuff? And even as a little kid, what was life like as a little kid? Even having chronic eczema as a kid is kind of traumatic in and of itself. So a bunch of stories and beliefs would have been created about who you are, what you look like, your skin. If there were food sensitivities right back then as well, then, that sends a lot of signals to the body that the world is unsafe, or that you might be weak or incapable or whatever it is. So that's, like the deepest root stuff around metaphysical is who are you at an identity level, and what is your skin or your symptoms trying to say to you. Something else just before we close up that I wanted to touch upon from a metaphysical point of view is your brain and your neural pathways. I mean, this is still the physical body as well. Everything's interconnected. Everything's interacting with each other. So when it comes to eczema, there's actually in NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming, there's a lot of work around eczema and allergy responses, which eczema basically is. So if it's reacting to foods and to chlorine and to different types of things, it's an allergy response. So it's a phobia of the immune system. And when a person develops an allergy, the immune system has, in essence, formed a kind of phobia reaction or a phobic reaction to the trigger or the substance. So you can think about these allergies as a tantrum of the immune system. Again, the way that you do anything is the way you do everything. Is there any kind of patterns around that as well? That it's just like, these mental explosions, or like, I get so annoyed or frustrated when this happens, or why is my life like this? Why am I stuck in a caravan? So again, you're looking at the patterns and the connections. And the stuff around the immune system specifically and triggers, things that can trigger it, is that it's a learned response. You weren't born having an allergy to gluten or dairy or to chlorine, or, whatever the listener or the listener's trigger is. You weren't born having an allergy to that, but it's acquired over time. And not just from a physical point of view, but there's like an emotional response that is wired into your system as well, that thing isn't safe, that thing is dangerous, that thing is bad. And so these neural pathways get stronger and stronger, so that when you are exposed to the trigger, things can get worse. And the cool thing around this like NLP work, neuroscience, is that it can be relearned. Your immune system can be relearned and retrained and rewired so that you can then have safe and healthy responses to triggers, which is really exciting. You just need the steps and the guidance in order to discover how you can actually rewire the immune system, which is something that we do inside our program, the Ending Body Burnout Method. I did it specifically for myself as well. I used to have like quite an intense allergy to even the tiniest amount of milk solids, but able to rewire the immune system and nervous system so that it's safe. And then if we connect that back to what Chris was talking about before with the beliefs and the stories, at an identity-based level, what you believe about yourself is going to impact your neural pathways and your immune system. So if you do, I'm just thinking of some clients that we've worked with that have eczema or allergy type issues. Some of their beliefs were, I'm powerless. Well, that makes a lot of sense. If I'm someone that's powerless, the world is so scary. Like I have no ability to be me in this world, and I'm powerless against things like gluten or salicylates or histamines.
She actually did say an accusation, but she phrased it needing a little tweaks. She said, "Am I good enough?" I think that's the way that she phrased it, as a question. So now, if you're asking the question, a part of you thinks you are good enough, but a part of you doesn't, does it? And so you've got this really interesting part of you that's saying, no, I'm not good enough. Not good enough. And I haven't been good enough ever since I was a little girl.
Yeah. And this bleeds into your physiology. So if one believes they're not good enough or powerless or incapable, then that belief is also believed about your body and your immune system and your ability to respond to threats in a resourceful, safe, healthy way. That's like the biggest threat. The biggest threat isn't what's outside of you. It's the meanings that you've made about yourself inside your system that is now dictating how your body systems respond to things. I mean, we could do a whole nother episode on the metaphysical causes of hormonal imbalances, which we'll leave for another time. Actually, I did one that went out a couple of weeks ago, talked about my hormones and my sore boobs. So you can head back to that one if you want to dig into hormonal reasons. One last little thing, again, when I was preparing for this podcast episode and I was just looking through like one of our NLP textbooks around allergies, and there is an allergy process that we use that can get some really great results. But there's a little paragraph in there that talks about secondary gains as well. So this is for any health issue. You could have any symptom and you could be holding on to it because it actually provides you with some needs, or there's some secondary gains or benefits that you receive from it. In reference to eczema, I'm going to read this because I was just like, oh, this is so interesting. I don't know if it's relevant to this listener's case, but it might be relevant to you, whoever is listening. In special cases, I'll come back to that in a seckie. So sometimes people can develop allergies and skin issues and food sensitivities because it's the only excuse people allow themselves to take a rest or to pay attention to their own health. It becomes a reminder of them to take care of themselves, so a returning back to self. In special cases, if a person's father, mother, or some other significant person in his or her life has had allergies, an individual may unconsciously feel that having a similar allergy is a way to stay connected with those significant others. So I thought I'd just leave that little potential insight that it's like, oh my gosh, am I holding on to this because this is some way how I'm getting connection with someone else? Oof. Am I ready to let that go?
I know she specifically mentioned about her mum taking her places, and you know, that's interesting. That's interesting in and of itself. Like, what was her relationship with her mum like? Look at 6 core needs. Tony Robbins talks about this. What needs did who did you search for love and affection or protection from? Where did you gain the most certainty from? Mum, dad, what was that like for you? That's an interesting couple of questions to journal on.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, again, I'm thinking about, even myself. I mean, I wasn't a sick kid, but I definitely started being a sick teenager, to the point where I had vasovagal episodes regularly. Fainted, fitted, peed myself. A secondary gain around that was I got time off school and Mum paid a lot of attention to me and took me to a lot of specialists. It's like that was a way I connected with Mum. There's a lot of other clients that are popping up into my head too around, especially as a little child. This was the only way I got attention. This was the way that I felt like I received love from my mum or my dad. Even one client actually used her sickness to pull her mum out of psychosis episodes, so these things can occur as a little kid and can continue stuck in your system, perpetuating into your adult life. And then it gets really confusing because you're like, what? It all came back from there? It's like, yes, it did. Yes, it did. And shea butter isn't going to help that.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So hopefully this helped you to gain a different perspective on eczema, the hormonal link and the immune system. Again, if you'd like to get your own case reviewed on the episode, just drop down to the show notes. I'll put a link there where you can send your case in for us to review on the podcast. And if you would personally like us to guide you through our holistic root cause approach, you can either start with a Connect the Dots initial consult. My calendar is open again, so I'll pop the link down there. I've got some times. I don't know. By the time this is published, I might not have any times in December. Might be booked out. Anyway, check it out. The other option is you can pop your name on our waitlist to our Ending Body Burnout Method program, which does include a Connect the Dots initial consult as the first one-on-one that you have with us. And that is the first step in our holistic root cause method.
And every time that we do open our doors, we usually run out of spaces. So if you're not on the wait list, you're probably going to run out of time and probably miss out again.
And the benefit of popping your name on the wait list now too is you get early access. So for 2 days before the official doors opening, which is in January, maybe the 22nd, but don't quote me on that. It's definitely end of Jan. We do open the doors 2 days early for the people on the wait list, and you do get access to over $500 worth of early bird bonuses if you're on the wait list.
Boom. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode. We look forward to catching you on the next one.
Thank you so much for listening. We so appreciate you. If you'd like to give us extra smiles, drop us a review and spread the love by sharing this episode.
You can also rate your own state of burnout and the root cause contributors by taking our Ending Body Burnout Assessment on our website. And if you're interested in learning about our group or one-on-one Ending Body Burnout programs, shoot us a DM via Instagram or Facebook.
Have the best day ever.